more often than not, of all the relationships that you've had, do you end the relationship or does the guy?
I've ended every single relationship.
What about you?
I've also ended every single relationship.
How many relationships have you been in?
3.
What about you?
3.
What about you?
Mostly me.
How many relationships have you been in?
4, 5.
What about you?
I've ended them all, I think like 5.
I've ended them all and I've only been in 2.
What about you?
5 or 6, and only once has somebody else ended the relationship.
What about you?
75% me, 8 or 9 relationships.
4 relationships and I've ended all of them.
Ended all 3.
Whoa. So hold on. A typical complaint I hear from women is, why are men so commitment phobic? Why are men scared of commitment? Why don't men want to get married? All of you, it's almost unanimous, have ended all of your relationships.
Can I add
Once
something?
you get commitment, you overwhelmingly
Okay,
end
can
it.
I?
Men are commitment phobic. All our lives, we hear this anti-male propaganda repeated over and over until we are brainwashed by it. Men are children. Men can't grow up. Men can't commit. Men can't take responsibility. If men truly are the ones that are scared of commitment, why is it in 70% of cases of divorce, is it the woman who is initiating that breakup? You ask a modern woman about this data and she'll tell you it's still the man's fault. Obviously, he was so obnoxious that she couldn't be in a relationship with him. She had no choice but to get a divorce. The fact that 70% of divorces are initiated by women is just proof that women are smart. They're clever enough to know when it's time to call it quits on a relationship. If anything, this data just proves once again that to them, it's all men's fault. But if that was true, if it really was men to blame, then answer me this question. Why is it that divorce rates amongst lesbian women are twice as high as they are for gay men? In the UK, as of 2013, lesbian couples were twice as likely to initiate actions to end legally recognized partnerships as compared to gay men. In 2016, married female couples were approximately 2.5 times more likely to divorce than male couples. This holds true in other countries as well, Norway and Sweden. A 2022 study of Norway using data up to 2018 found that divorce rates 20 years post-marriage were 5% lower for male-male marriages compared to male-female marriages, and were 29% higher for female-female marriages versus female-male marriages. Also in Denmark, the vast majority of gay marriages in Denmark are male-male. 14% of these end in divorce compared to 23% of female-female marriages. And the Netherlands, between 2004 and 2009, lesbian divorce rates were nearly double those of gay men. Interesting, isn't it? Like, if the feminist propaganda was true and men were to blame for all of these relationships, then when you have female-female relationships, it should just be a utopia, right? But it's not. Those relationships are breaking up at twice the rate of male-male relationships. So what's going on here? And this made me curious about other anti-male myths that have been pushed onto us as part of this relentless propaganda campaign, and whether or not comparing data about male-male relationships and female-female relationships could possibly debunk them. So I went and did some research, and spoiler alert, the results are extremely vindicating for men. We have been lied to so much, just blatantly force-fed bullshit. Our entire lives we've been told this crap. Wait till you see this data. But first, quickly, I want to tell you about the online discussion groups for men that I run called the Hero Circle. In fact, but rather than tell you myself, I thought you could hear from one of our members directly.
I'd consider it more a brotherhood of men to openly discuss issues, concerns, goals, past, present, future. It's everything in an environment that's very supportive but doesn't pander. I can't endorse it enough. If you're considering this as a route to closer connections with the masculine, with being involved in the creation of an online brotherhood in an environment that is incredibly collaborative and full of camaraderie, then I highly recommend that you sign up and you won't be disappointed.
I love that guy so much. I worked with him for over a year. When you meet with these guys every single week, the bond that you form is very strong. If that appeals to you and you want to find out more, you can sign up for a free consultation on the website. Okay, back to myths about men and women and using data from gay and lesbian relationships to debunk them. So, what about this myth?
Domestic abuse and intimate partner violence are gendered and are statistically more likely to affect women. We have been slowly entering an era of moral and intellectual regression due to things like misogyny becoming more and more socially acceptable, with rhetoric like domestic abuse has no gender.
I'm sure you're familiar with this one. All men are inherently violent, and we need to protect soft, delicate women from the excesses of male testosterone and aggression. There's actually been consistent effort over the last couple of decades to raise awareness about male victims of domestic abuse, and all of those efforts have been thoroughly resisted by feminists. Apparently, the message, all humans can be violent, let's just do our best to be nice to each other and get help for every victim regardless of gender, apparently that message is just not enough. No, they would rather push the propaganda that men are dangerous, men are violent. Women good, men bad. Women victims, men abusers. They want this to be about gender.
Who's more violent, men or women? I'm going to tell you a story. I was a resident assistant in a dorm in New York City for a year. And in that year, we had 37 acts of violence in the dorm, which required the police being called and also visits to the emergency room. So take a minute. How many were men? How many were women of these acts of 37 acts of violence? They were all women. In fact, one of them hit the other girl with a high heel shoe in her head. And what I think was happening is that little boys are taught to negotiate their anger, right? Men can de-escalate from conflict pretty easily because they grow up with that. They can also create the conflict, but they know how to de-escalate. Little girls aren't taught about that. We're taught that our anger is bad. Nobody wants an angry little girl. Don't be angry, little girl. And so we never really get to deal with our anger, and we never really know how to handle it when it comes. So we need to teach girls about their anger a lot better.
I know that this is anecdotal, but I guarantee if you read the comment section of this video, you will read stories from men who are victims of violence from women. We don't talk about it. The reason why you don't hear about it is because there's this push to maintain women's image as these fair, noble, gentle creatures who would never do harm to anybody. And also, we don't care about men's pain. They're not likely to speak up like, hey, this is happening to me, because they're going to be ignored anyway. When violence against men does occur, we downplay its significance. But you can see anecdotally that there are numerous instances of women being violent. But in truth, we don't need to rely on personal stories. We have hard data. Again, let's compare gay male relationships to female lesbian relationships. Because if it's true that men are the violent ones and women are gentle and peaceful, well then when you remove men from romantic relationships, then it should just be all calm and peaceful, right? Well, let's have a look. Lifetime prevalence of intimate partner violence in lesbian, gay, and bisexual couples. 43.8% of lesbian women and 26% of homosexual men experienced intimate partner violence during their life. When episodes of severe violence were considered, prevalence was similar or higher for lesbian, gay, and bisexual adults. Lesbian women, 29.4%, homosexual men, 16.4%. That's in the United States, but the same is true in my country. The Australian Research Centre for Health and Sexuality conducted a national demographic and health and well-being survey of 5,476 LGBTIQ people and found significant levels of intimate partner violence. Around 28% of male-identifying respondents and 41% of female-identifying respondents reported having been in a relationship where the partner was abusive. There's no other way to interpret this data. Far from being a calm, peaceful utopia when men aren't around, when there's only women in relationships, violence increases. Isn't that strange? Isn't that curious? Doesn't that run counter to what we've always been told? Men are violent, men are Neanderthals, men only know how to solve their problems with their fists. But if that's true, then why is it that when there are two men in a relationship, the rates of violence are so much lower? Check out this data. According to a 2018 academic review, 26% of homosexual men reported experiencing intimate partner violence in their lifetime, compared to 29% of heterosexual men. Do you understand the implications of this data? As a man, if you choose to be in a relationship with a woman, that makes you more likely to be a victim of violence than if you're in a relationship with another man. If the propaganda is true that women are better communicators than men, they're better at conflict resolution. They know how to talk about their feelings. Women are more compassionate and caring. If all of that is true, then why are they so violent with each other? And you know what's frustrating is that even when presented with the data, there will still be people who don't believe it. I mean, these statistics, they're kind of interesting, I suppose, from an intellectual curiosity point of view, but deep down, we know men are more violent. That is how deep the propaganda is. I don't know how to get this through to you more clearly than just saying you have been blatantly lied to. A false reality has been draped over our eyes. The truth is that women absolutely are violent. All humans are violent. But what about the notion that women are better parents than men? Women are more nurturing, they're less selfish, they're more likely to put the children's needs first. Now, if that's true, then we should see children of lesbian couples outperforming children of gay male couples. Those children should be better adjusted and more likely to be successful in the world. But is that true? Let's find out. This is from a Canadian study in 2013, and you can see here that when it comes to children graduating high school, children from gay parents are graduating at a higher rate than children from lesbian parents. 0.60 compared to 0.52. I had to really go digging to find this data because clearly this is a sensitive subject. Apart from this one, in every study that I found, they just lumped gay and lesbian relationships all together. And that made it very difficult to find meaningful data as it relates to gender and its impact on parenting. And it made me wonder if they did find research that confirmed the prevailing narrative that women are far superior than lowly men at parenting, whether or not they would have lumped everybody in together, or if they would have proudly published that data and it would have made headlines across the world. Proof, look at how amazing women are as parents when men aren't in the picture. If the data showed that, I'm pretty sure we'd be hearing about it. But if the data shows the opposite, I think it's going to be silence. Anyway, like I mentioned, it was difficult to find good data on this topic. If anybody comes across any new research, please forward that on to me. But for me, it's sort of moot because we already have solid data about how disastrous it is for children when they're raised only by women, because we know the outcomes for children when they're raised by single mothers. The absence of a father, a masculine authority figure, is an insanely reliable predictor for how that child is going to end up in the world. Kids need dads. Look at these statistics. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes, 5 times the average. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes, 32 times the average. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes, 20 times the average. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes, 14 times the average. And 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes, 9 times the average. Children need fathers. Men are absolutely essential when it comes to parenting. The role they play is irreplaceable. But returning to our comparison of gay men to lesbian women, I find each gender's experience of homosexuals of the opposite gender to be very revealing, because women love gay men. They often have a lot of gay male friends.
I'm also not scared of gay men.
Yeah, gay men just they feel so comforting and I don't know. I think a lot of women have been wronged by straight men, and so I think when they see gay men, they see it as a different type of man, and they're like, oh my god, I love you, you're so nice to me, majority of the time.
Isn't that interesting? It's like women, they almost create a new category of human when it comes to gay men. Why do they do that? That's what I explore in the Patreon version of this video. Because isn't it common to hear how women's lives are enriched by the presence of gay men? Yet how rare is it for a heterosexual man to say that his life is enriched by all of his lesbian friends? For the rest of this video, I move out of data and more into speculation, and it gets interesting. If you'd like to keep watching the video, then please come over to Patreon. That's where I post the full-length versions of my videos. What you see here on YouTube, this is just the shortened, abridged versions. The full-length versions are available on Patreon.